Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Jason L. Jones with UATV. In their 4 years of operation, Ukraine's state electronic procurement system, ProZorro, has saved 100 billion hryvnias for Ukrainian taxpayers. The total number of trades since the launch of the system exceeds $4 million. Just to remind you, ProZorro is a fully online public procurement platform that ensures open access to public procurement in Ukraine. To talk more about the achievements of the ProZorro system and its plans for 2020, we're joined in the studio today by Vasyl Zadvorny, CEO of ProZorro. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Likewise. So, as I said before, more than 215,000 entrepreneurs benefit from using your platform, 80% of them being small businesses. The main advantage of ProZorro is its provisions of the open data on purchases that enables any business, regardless of its volume of country or country, to participate in the government tenders, right? So how did ProZorro save taxpayers 100 billion hryvnias?
Well, basically, in order to explain the savings mechanism, we should start, first of all, with the explanation of situation before the ProZorro. So, just to remind those of you who probably took part in the public procurement before the ProZorro, I'll remind the situation when all the announcements were printed in the literally newspaper, which called Вісник державних закупівель. So it was like a newspaper with pretty small numbers of copies, and you should buy them and find the announcement there, and then you should print all your bidding documentation on the paper, put it in the envelope, stamp it, sign each page, then send it somewhere, and wait for unreasonable time just for an answer. Probably you'll get an answer that you was disqualified, and then you again just anything you can do in this case is just to write down again the email and to get some kind of explanation there. One of the part which ProZorro introduced into the public procurement is that ProZorro opens all the information about all the procurement procedures which being held in Ukraine. And the second main advantage of the ProZorro is that, well, I mean, by the first advantage, now everyone can see everything, and you cannot just hide your procurement from the market. So if the suppliers see some kind of announcement in the ProZorro system, then he can just attend in this procurement, and nobody can forbid this action for the supplier. Another main part of the ProZorro is this consumptory auction, in which every supplier has 3 steps in order to decrease the price, and the procuring entity is obligated to buy those commodity which is the most cheap from the commodity which fits the quality criteria. So ProZorro does not require you to buy the cheapest commodity or service, but you definitely should buy the cheapest from those which are being qualified by the quality criteria. By these 2 mechanisms, we involve a lot of suppliers, and by involving a lot of suppliers, we definitely increase the competencies level in the system. And definitely with the number of competencies, you decrease the prices. And because we do have this consumptory auction, the suppliers are intended to lower price as much as they can, so we reach a market equilibrium. And by doing so, we definitely reach the number of these savings for taxpayers.
Wow, wow. You know, that actually, kind of off topic, but, or a similar topic, we recently had a gentleman in from the government regarding procurement for defense, the defense budget and whatnot, and them going, more in the same way. Have you worked with the government in this, in that capacity?
Definitely. Over in the ProZorro, there is a specific procedure designed specifically for Ministry of Defense, which with different terms and different clauses, because they do have some kind of, some kind of tough situations sometimes. Moreover, state enterprise Ukроборонпром, which recently gets the new top management, started their procurement through the ProZorro system. So just like all this time before, Ukроборонпром held all their procurement outside of the ProZorro. So we didn't see any kind of specific information about the competences, about the prices, about the appeals, and so on and so forth. Thanks to the new management and specifically to Nadia Begun, who is right now is a general procuring officer in the Ukроборонпром, they started to hold their procurement through the ProZorro. So we are expecting rising transparency in this area as well.
Okay, okay. And which regions of the Ukraine do you see are using ProZorro more often?
Basically all governmental entities and municipal governments and state-owned enterprise should use the ProZorro, with the small exceptions for like specific secret procurements and like that. But when we are comparing, so that means that we do have like 35,000+ of procuring entities who conduct the procurement in the ProZorro system. And by the way, on a daily basis, there are much more than 4,000 procuring being announced in the system. So like 1 million on the annual basis. It's quite a huge system in these terms. But when we are comparing region to region, we should understand that the region which have more money will conduct more procurement and will get more savings in that way. That means that like a Kiev region, Kharkiv region, Dnipro region, Odessa, Lviv are the champions in terms of number of procurements, in terms of number of procuring entities, in terms of number of procedures, and in that way in terms of number of savings as well.
Okay, okay. And how is the electronic procurement system developed for 2019?
Well, basically, that's the long story. I'll try to make it as short as I can, because I mean the ProZorro way is a way of classical garage startup, which started as a startup with really these 3F investments from friends and family and whatever, and which was developed till the end of 2015 to the fully operating system. If we are talking about this 2019 year, so within this year we accomplished several major accomplishments, achievements, achieved several achievements. So first of all, we definitely finished this information security certification story. Okay. So probably you have heard. If you didn't, that's fortunately for you. We do have this information security certification called KSZI in Ukraine. It's the national security, informational security standard, and all the governmental system are required to get this certification. And the main problem here is that you cannot use like these international recognized cloud service providers as Amazon or Google Cloud in order to get this certification. So we transferred system from Amazon, where it was situated initially, to the Ukrainian-based data center. And then we get this certification, and we are one of the first systems which get this information certification for the cloudly based system. Second of all, we developed a lot of, so the informational security was definitely in our core focus within this year. Another stuff which we have worked on was the tools for centralized procurement. At the very beginning of the year, we implemented fully functional for the framework agreements, which allows procuring entity to contract not one supplier, but the number of suppliers into the framework agreement, and then to deal with all these suppliers within the small iterations in terms of this framework agreement. Ukroposhta, for example, achieved significant results by buying petrols and electricity using framework agreements. Another part was the building of online shop called ProZorro Market. It's like eBay or Alibaba for governmental procuring entities. And the idea here is pretty the same. So you do have pre-qualified suppliers and pre-qualified commodities or goods, sometimes even services. And everything you need to do then is just to put the good into the cart and just sign the contract, and that's it. No long procedure, no long qualification, no appeals, nothing else. ProZorro Market should work only on in the under thresholds procedures. So that's mean for the procedures which are lower than 200,000 of hryvnias, it's like 8,000 of United States dollars. A little bit more right now. As for now, there are amounts of commodities already which were bought through the ProZorro Market, and we are really focused on the developing this tool, because next year the threshold for under threshold agreements will be decreased, and it will be no more than 50,000 of hryvnias, which is approximately 2,500 of United States dollars. That means that amounts of goods then should be procured through the either consumptory auction procedure or through the ProZorro Market. And ProZorro Market is definitely much more easier and simple way for the procuring entity to buy so. And for the suppliers, it's a great way to go through the qualification procedure only once and then get a huge market of goods within the Ukraine. So, I mean, that's like our major focuses. Also, we developed a lot of stuff connected with the digitalization and integration with other services, and so on and so forth. But like this centralization stuff and stuff for information security was in our core focus this year.
And there's a new law, new edition of the public procurement law that's been adopted. You know, when it comes into force April 19th. What does the new law give, and what changes will it make for next year?
Well, that's definitely really well, I mean, like very expected by the community, and this law was drafted probably at the very beginning of 2017. Fortunately, new Ukrainian parliament adopted this law and president signed it. There are a lot of areas in the public procurement which are being modified by this law, but probably one of the most expected is the area of justice and the appeals. So the new law introduced new responsibilities for the public procuring entities, like a personal responsibility. Because I mean, it's really important for the whole area not only to provide the information about the public procurement, not only to open the data about like possible violation in the system, but also to implement the penalties and introduce like kind of responsibility for wrongdoings. We faced a lot of, I would say, issues within the previous years with this penalty enforcement. So the new law increased the responsibility for the public procuring entities, and we are expecting that it will work much more efficient. Another part is the appealing process. So you can use anti-monopoly committee as an appeal agency in Ukraine in order to appeal, in order to resolve the conflict within the problem. And by the way, it's worth to mention that in Ukrainian case, anti-monopoly committee works in really high pace. They managed to resolve the issue within the 15-20 days, in comparison to the Spain, where it takes approximately 60 days, and it might take up to 100 days in US, for example. So it's really high intensive work. But on another hand, anti-monopoly committee, this conflict resolution technique was used by some kind of suppliers as a tool for tender posing. So they just put the appeals in the anti-monopoly committee. Each of these appeals will pause the procedure for like 2 or 3 days, and by doing so they can like delay the procurement and get a leverage for the procuring entity. New law introduced a lot of stuff in order to omit these wrongdoings. For example, you will pay only for those appeals which was declined by anti-monopoly committee. So if anti-monopoly committee decided that you was right, then you will get your money back. You can pay on the online basis. Before that, you should pay only like within the bank and then put the scan into the system, and it was also really inconvenient. And the prices of the appeal will be dependent on the prices of the procurement, because I mean right now the price for the appeal is like 5,000 hryvnias, which is approximately $400, so kind of that. And definitely, if you take part in the procurement, which is costs like approximately 500,000 hryvnias, that price might be pretty high for you. And if you take in part in the procurement, which costs like 550 million hryvnias, you can put these appeals, you know, like appeals for appeal, and you will lose nothing. And by doing so, you will get the leverage on the customer. New law introduced, you know, these stairs prices for the appeals. That means that for the cheapest procedure, the appeal will be cheap, and for the most expensive procedure, the appeal will be also expensive. So that's one of the major. Also, new law introduced a lot of new stuff in terms of procurement efficiency, in terms of harmonization with the EU law, and so on.
Well, thank you so much. It was really appreciated. A lot of insights, a lot of information. Look forward to seeing how everything progresses with the law in 2020. You know, hopefully it'll be a good year for ProZorro.
Well, nice to see you next year.
Likewise. So that was Vasyl Zadvorny, CEO of ProZorro. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for future head-to-heads and much, much more from UATV.